This is another edition of Petz's Final Verdict.
Hello, this is my latest game review. It's my final verdict for Condemned Criminal Origins. And I'd heard that I actually played this game at least 10 years ago on the Xbox 360, and I simply fancied revisiting it.
He was your friend!
Condemned was developed by Monolith Productions and published by Sega. Condemned is a survival horror game, though in many ways it's more a psychological thriller. You play an FBI agent called Ethan Thomas, and you are called to the scene of a crime where someone was murdered. You meet up with other fellow police officers who show you to the crime scene. At this crime scene you use various tools to get certain kinds of evidence, and it turns out that the murder is by a serial killer. From here things go south. You chase a suspect through the building only to lose your gun, which is then used to kill two of the officers who you previously met. From here you spend your time trying to gather evidence, again with the use of various tools, to try and clear your name. Gameplay in this is a little different to most other first-person games involving guns. With this, most of the time, you have melee weapons, but sometimes you will get a gun. Mostly it's a pistol, then later you'll find shotguns, SMGs and other types of guns. Basically, you'll have your pistol, and when you press R, instead of reloading, you check how much ammo you have. When you run out of ammo, you then will use your gun to pistol whip people. After a while it will degrade and break. You also find that you don't actually get more ammo, you just simply replace the gun with a different one you find. It means you'll have to consider the risks of your weapon choice when progressing in the game. Say if you have a pistol with only 6 shots left but you find a shotgun with 3 shots, would you take the risk of having the more powerful 3 shots or the less powerful 6? You'll need to weigh up which will benefit you more going forward. Yes, the shotgun is more powerful, but one shot may miss and you may end up running out of ammo. Then again, those pistol bullets may not be enough to take down the enemies you're approaching. The great thing is there's usually plenty of wood or metal pipes or bars you can pick up and boink people on the heads with. Enemies, generally speaking, are just normal people. Normal people who are whacked out of their minds on some kind of new drug. The combat is pretty straightforward. You can either hit people with your melee weapon, or you can block someone from attacking you. Earlier in the game, attacking without needing to block much is pretty standard, but as you get through the game, blocking becomes more necessary. And when you block an attack, it slightly stuns an enemy, which gives you an opening to whack them in the face. There's one other thing that helps in combat, and that's the taser. The taser stuns enemies for a limited amount of time. So you want to stun enemies, then give them a whack when it's not on cooldown. That's the one drawback. You could use it on one enemy, and then it has to recharge, and you realise it would have been better to have kept it for the enemy around the corner with the crowbar. The game is pretty easy for the most part, with some areas a little tougher than others, but nothing too over the top. While there is that risk-reward aspect, it's really to the point where if you make a mistake you'll die. It can make things more difficult, but taking your time when things are wrong will help. For the majority of the game you are alone, hunting for clues to clear your name, searching for the killer, dealing with the super aggressive drug users, but you are in contact with another FBI agent who believes you to be innocent, and helps with dealing with the evidence you find, matching fingerprints or linking, say, an oil splash with a certain brand, and that sort of thing. This person is Agent Rosa, and she also meets up with you on one occasion to help find certain clues and evidence that is needed to make headway in Ethan's case. You also have an occasional chat with an old man, though much rarer than Rosa, and he's not a part of the FBI. You'll find your way moving through several locations, all with a creepy atmosphere. The locations vary in creepiness, like the subway and surrounding areas surprisingly aren't too creepy feeling, but the lit up department store with more colour than anywhere else in the game is one of those really tense places. What's also interesting is you also have little episodes of psychosis, which in turn makes weird shit go on in certain places. For example, the world becomes somewhat abstract and it becomes black and white, or an area appears to be outside even though you're in a locked building. I find it peculiar how many of these places actually are similar in the way they look, many being grey and dark places that are run down, yet they mostly feel very different from each other when working your way through each area, as if it has its own personality and doesn't just feel like it's copy and pasted. And then it's got like, it's coated in chocolate as well. I literally have no idea who's shooting the fucking gun. Ah, they're over there. Over it! Fuck. The audio of the game is on point. It's atmospheric for the most part, but can ramp up and it makes you feel the urgency of the situation when needed. In some areas when walking around and you aren't able to see anyone, but you hear this droning overtone and someone breathing or something scuttling around, it can make for a tense feeling when exploring. All the sound seems to be well executed. The guns sound meaty, the melee weapons sound like they actually have weight. The area's ambient sounds are great too. The footsteps, the wind, the banging of something in the distance. It all adds together for the feel of an isolated investigation. Mixed with the visuals and weird goings on, it all adds up for a pretty creepy game. Talking about the visuals, the game holds up really well, considering it was made in 2005. And they're probably better than a lot of games that came later. I do have some issues with the game. It's far from perfect. One issue is some of the sound seemed wrong. I know I previously said the audio is great, and it is, but certain sections, like where I had to mess with valves, the steam made no sound. There were other areas in the game that this happened. I have no idea if this was intended, or if it's an issue with the game on PC, or just my PC. It wasn't too much of a distraction in general, but it was noticeable in a few areas, and it's a shame as the sound apart from this is wonderfully executed. The other issue is I thought the game was rather short. This isn't really an issue in and of itself, it's more I thought I played the game much longer when I first played it, but this time it took me around 5 hours, which isn't really that long at all. But at the same time I think it's a good length for this kind of game, and I guess the longevity would have been increased had I collected all the collectibles. Lastly, this is an issue due to playing the game before as well. But when I originally played it, I found it much more creepy. Certain areas of the game were nestled in my brain as being really ominous, and things that happened with certain aspects truly freaky. But on the second playthrough it loses a little of that impact, and I was left a little disappointed with what I thought I remembered. The thing is, it still does have that ominous and supernatural vibe throughout, and if you're playing it for the first time, you'll get a kick from crapping your pants. So the way they run in, he really should have his stick between his legs to make it look like he's riding a pony. Condemned does really well to feel different to horror games at the time, and I do wonder how much this game has inspired the more modern horror games. It has interesting mechanics with the way the melee and gun works. It's also interesting that it has you look at crime scenes and find clues that makes you feel like you're actually doing some cool detective work. Most of all, it's a game that will keep you intrigued throughout, as you'll want to know more of what the hell is going on, and how, or even if, Ethan actually gets back to normality after all this messed up escapade. It's been a treat replaying this game after 10 plus years, and it's certainly worthy of 8 Pugsleys out of 10.
you enjoyed that video, why not give Pedz a follow if you enjoyed it? And while you're at it, check out grk.co.uk and the GRK Collective on YouTube. Yeah.